Chapter 17. Walking into 2010, two things became evident and crystal clear. Being able to get enough income in and making consistent income to be able to get caught up with my mortgage and being able to protect my copyright work and stop the harassment from these trolls. Angela came again during the spring, and we used more gold passes to Mill Quarter Golf Course, and this time Kevin, Angela, and myself played golf. Angela actually watched me and Kevin and refused to play golf, just rode in the golf cart. Kevin hooked one shot that nearly took off a deer, and Kevin made the comment about the deer was ready to eat him. I said, "No, it's just a baby deer, actually a fawn." As we spent the day at the golf course, we spent the better half of the day. When Angela and I got home, more screwing and banging to help get that baby in the basket. She said she would help me when she got her dad's inheritance. I said, "Yeah, it kinda fucks with my head how I went through $250,000 to 300,000 within 8 years." Then she talked about opening up a business like a coffee house. I told her how ironic because that's exactly what I was trying to do, but never materialized. Told her about the contact about the person I spoke with, but how he changed his plans midstream and how I was not agreeable to it. Then she insisted on talking with him. I told her it would be a waste of her time, but she still insisted. So we started to argue about that, and I told her, "I know a little something or two about negotiating, since I own my own music business before and took marketing and business mass advertising in school." Still, stubborn as a mule, thinking she knew more than me. Meanwhile, the gorgeous George show was looking for a new female co-host. Fucking course. Kevin and I spoke with a girl named Sarah Redacted, going by Sarah Annette. She came off as understandable to my situation, and in the beginning was agreeable to helping the show and scripting some of the show. I grew fondness towards Sarah because I felt like not only would she be a great female and easy on the eyes for the show, she took the time to work with some of the creative scripting of the show and for the musical guest for the show in the year 2010. She scripted the most interesting man intro to the show. She was the most hands on with the show, second to me. And for the very short time she was with me, I was grateful for her creative juices and input. She actually spent the day with me at my office at the Money Clip, coming up with ideas to help the show. I tried to persuade her to stay on, but I couldn't get her to agree. Though again, for the short time she was on, for that 1 year of 2010, she was great with her contributions. Later on within the year, I began to try to create extra ways in making money and tried my hand in more commercials and voiceover work. With the backup and oversaturated area of talent, I couldn't get these gigs as regular as I would normally would prior, and that paid accordingly to my experience. Finally, I was making the same kind of income I was making just during the Money Clip magazine. My salary was taken away to the commission base and draw. Due to changes in the structure of the business, I would still get residuals from prior accounts that I had, but the company insisted to start paying straight commission for their contractors. Which until finally I had to burn the midnight oil, and so I started working as a cab driver for this Iranian guy's company, Broad Street Taxi. So the income started to come in with the work and with the calls coming in. Doing weekend work with the cab business, the phones would ring in and money started to get better again for me. Cab line would start at the Omni, and I met some very interested cabbies. Some that became close with, and some that I wanted to kick their ass. A Turkish guy named Braki. He went by that name because he was a big Sylvester Stallone fan. Constantine with Gus Taxi and Sam's Taxi, obviously named Sam. Like of these people were foreigners, but came from all over from Greece, like with Constantine, and Rocky from Turkey. I then left Broad Street Taxi and went to a place called Allied Taxi and stayed with him until I got my own taxi company, which will be later discussed when the time gets closer. Throughout working with the cab companies, I had some very weird encounters with people who would ride in my cab. A lot of these you can make up even with the most creative mind. though it was enjoyable and I met a few people down the road. I met Tim Redacted. They called him Bo. Bo was a rapper and had his own singing contracts and worked as a cab driver about the same time I started. Then Eddie with Tuckahoe Taxi. Even though it was a cutthroat business, just like sales, it was a little bit more stable because people needed to drink and get home from the clubs. So money was getting for me during this period, walking into the new year of 2011. While work was my main focus, I was getting stressed out with money. Norman Matt's dad asked if Matt could move back in with me. I said, I have no problem with that, but next time I need more of notice if he was going to move him out again. I told him that old redneck is still across the street, so he would be setting Matt back up for more anxiety concerning the neighbors. Though I personally didn't care because I needed the money. And as long as Norman paid for his son's rent until Matt got a job, I didn't care how, just as long as I would get money. Matt, his dad Norman, and I all agreed to move him back in, so Matt moved back in early 2011. Neighbors eventually caught on and started to be more stare downs with the dumbest shit redneck across the street after Matt moved back in for the second time. Angela came back down in 2011 for the fourth time and the last time. She helped me tremendously, in which I was grateful for selling some of antique dolls on eBay, which helped me. She knew I was going through more struggles, so made a profit of $2,500. I was very appreciative for that and thanked her for all of her help and help against the trolls. Meanwhile, the trolls started to get more blatant with trying to rub my name in the mud and sending pizza companies to come with a constant supply of pizzas. I had to tell these places that I don't order deliveries, that they were fake orders coming in from some internet trolls that had been harassing me. Then also sending gay people to my house pretending to be me, advertising to these people in which I had chased off the property and put no trespassing sites all around the house. So things became a little bit more intolerable dealing these idiots. So their techniques started more aggressively in trying to get in my real world. They would put up my material and copies of my show which I had to keep knocking down. Finally, a second lawsuit was filed against the bitches, all being ringleader by this obsessed queer, Sean Brennan. His identity, along with a few others, had been discovered through their Facebook accounts and through other internet sites. Angela came over and was introduced to Matt, and the three of us went to dinner. At this time, I was keeping busy and trying to keep everything taken care of, along with Angela's help of selling her antique dolls, working the money clip during the day and taxi during the night. Angela stayed for a short time and then went back after a week. Angela had good intentions at the beginning and things could have progressed, but the distance wasn't going to work. Some of her mannerisms became a little too much to handle at times, but still seemed at the time the strongest ally I had. One evening after cabbing, I came home at 3 in the morning. Fontaine greeted me like always and needed to take his nightly crap, so I took him outside of the fence to do his business. I went upstairs to check to see if Matt was home and was passed out asleep in his room. Brought Fontaine back in from outside and laid in the living room with Fontaine on the couch. Later on, I fell asleep and heard a knock at the door. Fontaine jumped up, which woke me up. Heard the knock again. So Fontaine jumped up and running to the door. I walked to the door and said, "Who in the fuck is knocking at my door at 3:30 in the morning?" No word, so I put Fontaine in the kitchen and shut the door. I picked up Louisville Slugger baseball bat and opened the door and saw this image approach me. I said, "Who in the fuck are you?" He said, "I'm here for a party." What fucking party in the AM? He said, party. I said, "Then I'm going to give you a chance to walk off my property on your own, or I will escort you physically, and if I do that, I'm not responsible for you going through to the ground." So then he said, "So you didn't post a party?" I said, "No." Now get the fuck off my property. I proceeded to move him off and gave him a push to the ground. Now I said, that's a push. The next thing will be a closed fist going to your face. He said, I'm sorry, I'll leave. I said, yes, you most certainly will. Then I summoned you to the side to tell me where you saw this so-called ad. He said he saw it on the internet. I said, was it from a gay site? He said, yes. I said, well, I'm not gay, and don't ever step back on my property again. I then called the Enrico police and made a report. Very steamed up and blood boiling. I called Angela and told her what happened, and then woke Matt up and told him as well. This little prick, if I didn't force the prick off my property, would have not left. Though the authorities were alerted. When it rains, it pours. A few days later, I get a phone call from Richard, my stepdad, that my mother passed away and how soon could I get down to come to the funeral. Shaken up, I proceeded to inform Matt and told Angela and made the trip in my car to Bristol, Virginia. Very emotional, I saw my mother in the casket. She seemed very peaceful laying there. I remember the fact she couldn't even recognize me a few years later. It was an emotional period and took a toll on Richard, but you could tell it was also a relief for him since he was up in age himself and now knowing Mom was no longer in any more pain. Throughout the time of going there, throughout driving trips to Vegas, I could tell my mother's condition was getting worse. My mother was in a better place with no more medical expenses that Richard had to pay over beyond what the insurance paid for. It was hard to deal with, but coping with the ordeal for a week. Very painful, but was able to feel better once I knew all those years without my mother leaving me wasn't what she wanted. Now she was at a better place for all her suffering and pain. Headed back home with more drama with Matt and the neighbors. Matt was scared to walk to his car when that fucker was staring at him.
I told him he had nothing to worry about and that fucker couldn't do anything to him as long I was around.